This is Seeds Podcast, bringing you tips, conversations, and information about applied behavior analysis.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Seeds Podcast, and we are already at season 3 of Seeds Podcast. In this season, we are going to bring you a lot of exciting topics, and all these topics are all going to be related to applying the science of ABA to different fields. So it's going to be really fun, very fun 5 episodes. And in this very first episode, we are going to talk about applying ABA in gerontology. We are very fortunate in this episode to have Choo Ying. Choo Ying is a fellow Malaysian, but she's currently in UK in Bangor University doing her research in behavioral gerontology. Without further ado, I will let Choo Ying do a brief introduction about herself, and we will jump into the topic for today. Hi, Choo Ying.
Hi everyone. So I'm Choo Ying. You can also call me CY. And yes, I'm currently a PhD student in Bangor University in the UK, and so starting this year onwards, actually, my research focus has changed to doing PBS in school. So it's applying ABA in school. So how can we support the teacher and support the students? In terms of like behavior or performance. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Right. And previously, Choo Ying, can you share with us about your journey in applying ABA? You know, how did you start your career? Have you been in this field? How long have you been in this field? And did you start off your ABA journey going to gerontology or working with kids first? What was it like for you?
Yes. So I actually started working as ABA therapist with children with autism. So right after I finished my undergraduate degree in psychology, I went to work for a private clinic, private service provider to work with children with autism for about 3 years. So in that, I work in like clinic setting, I work in like home-based setting, I also work as like a school shadow. So I've done a lot of like things, like the common things that, ABA therapists would do when they work with children with autism. And it's mostly in EIBI setting. So yes, EIBI setting. We also do a little bit of work in the community as well, but not so much because at that time, most of my clients are in the age like before 10. So it's mostly therapies and school. Yep. So after that, I decided to pursue a master in ABA. So that's how I came to the Bangor and did my master in ABA. So yeah, and at that time, our course has opened up a practicum in gerontology. So we usually have a practicum in school settings, working in school with a school BCBA, the supervisors. But at that time, so my supervisor at that time, she has a huge interest in gerontology because she has some of the working experience in this field as well before she came to the UK to be a lecturer. So she has worked alongside with a clinical psychologist, and then they came out with this practicum, this internship that they would like to recruit students to work in dementia wards or in care home settings. So, and I applied for it because why not? It sounds really interesting, and I really want to learn how we can use ABA in various fields, not just for children or children with autism, but also other population. So I applied for it and I got it. So that's how I got into the field of gerontology, and I worked in that field for about 3 years as well, and that's how I gained my BCBA status. And after that, I decided to continue to stay in Bangor and do a PhD. And because of all the changes, and so the current situation with COVID as well and all that. So again, I've changed my career path, my field into now working in school. So it's not just limited to special needs. The school I'm working now is a special needs school. Yeah, we're also looking to expand the ABA service to general public school, mainstream school as well. Yeah, so that's how my journey started so far, and I think I've been in this field for about 9 years now. Yeah, so yeah, that's that's how I got here.
Right, right. I think it's your experience is so unique
Yeah.
because you have gone from EIBI, so early intervention that was in Malaysia, right? You were still in Malaysia,
Yes.
and then you pursue your master's, and then you hop on to gerontology, which is, I think it's so interesting because I don't think any of the practitioners, any of the ABA practitioners in Malaysia has ever applied or has ever thought of going collaborate, doing something collaboratively in those kind of setting or with those kind of population. And like generally in Malaysia, ABA is still, can I say, 100% associated to special education.
Yes,
Right.
it's very focused. Yes.
Right. So we just find your experience so interesting that you were in gerontology for a while, and then now you're actually moving into schools, and that is also something that we don't see a lot in Malaysia. Usually in Malaysia, ABA is provided by like you say, private service providers, and parents pay monthly fees for these therapists to go to their houses or either send their kids to the centers, right? Yeah, so I think the diversity of how ABA can be applied to different fields is very interesting. So Choo Ying, we really want to pick your brain today on not so much on the EIBI part that a lot of Malaysians are very familiar with, but on gerontology. So could you maybe define for us what is gerontology? What does this feel like? Who do they work with? You mentioned dementia, but is it only for dementia, or what is it?
Yeah, sure. So gerontology is actually the study of aging, and in all aspects. So it's include physical, psychological, culture aspect, and all that. So it's not limited to dementia only, which I think it's a very common misconception of public, is that they thought that gerontology means working with older adults with dementia or cognitive problem, but that's not the case. So, and in terms of ABA, so that means you study how the antecedents and then the environmental elements that is relevant and how that contribute to the aging issue. Yeah. So, so like I said earlier, this practicum, the gerontology practicum that I applied to in my master, so it was the first ever practicum in the UK that actually provides ABA service to older adults. And so how that happened is so basically at that time, my supervisor at that time was looking for an opportunity to work with older adults in using ABA services or applying ABA principles to older adults. So and she came across to the clinical psychologist, who then became my second supervisor for my practicum. Yeah. So the clinical psychologist at the time was working. She was working in a dementia ward. So the dementia ward, it's I think it's like a 14 bedded. It's almost like a residential unit, but it's a ward, so it's like a part of the hospital as well. And in there, the service user that was admitted into the dementia ward, they are mostly people from the community. So either older adults that have been living in their homes itself, or they're living in the residential settings, and they all have some sort of behavioral issues that need further assessment or further investigation. So that's how they got admitted into the ward. And most often these behavioral issues are a bit too difficult to be handled either by the carers or by themselves, like they can't. So that's why they're in the ward, they're trying to find ways to manage it. And in the ward, that's where they get all the intervention. So they have people that look at the physical difficulties, and then they have people that look at the medication and all that. So at that time, even though they have inputs from like OT, from the physiotherapists and from clinical psychologists, but it's very, very limited, and it's mostly medication. But we all know how too much medication is actually not good for any individual. So at that time, they're also looking for ways to how to get more input from the behavioral side, you know, to target the behavioral issues instead of like relying on the medication, because you don't want it to be like a lifestyle medication. Yeah.
So sorry, Trey. So very early on, the team has already identified with this population, like the clinical psychologists have already acknowledged that with this population, there are behavioral issues that you know, with the existing team of OT and even medication can't really help long term. So that's how they came up with the idea of engaging with a behaviorist.
Yes. So I think they definitely have that idea of, okay, this is a behavioral issues that we can't seem to tackle it. So we definitely need someone. But like you say, it's not common to use ABA in like older adult setting. So even for them at that time, they're like struggling. They're not sure who to find, who are the right expert. And, you know, they try OT, they try physiotherapy, but that seems to target only specific issues, but not the other issues they want to look into. Yeah. So then when my supervisor at then that approaches clinical psychologists, they're like, oh my gosh, you are the person that we are looking for, you know. So they just think that, oh, we need the specific people that have the, you know, the behavioral background to come in and to see that if this might help. So for them, this is also like a trial. It's like a guinea pig project as well. yeah, but that's how they came up with the idea of the internship, so to work along in a dementia ward.
Right. And that's when you guys started to try to apply some of the intervention that are based on the principles of behaviors to see if the behavioral issues presented can be better in those population. Wow.
Yes. And also to look at how to identify the problems, or how to identify the issues, because in the ward itself, it mainly consists of nurses and healthcare assistants. So and that they are trained in taking care or caring for the older adults, but probably but they're not trained in identify the behavioral issues or identify the function, if we put it in the ABA terms. So I think that's how our expertise comes in and actually help with that alongside with their caring procedure as well.
So it's usually from the carer's side, from that point of view, is usually when something happens, then they deal with it, but there's like no long-term like intervention to help improve their life, right? The quality of their life. I see. Well, I think it's really interesting that someone actually picked that up and tried to find an expert in behavioral background to deal with it. How has the journey been? So you have then applied for this internship, and you must have spent a lot of time in the ward, in the care home. And I read some of your articles. You have, you know, tried to, you know, arrange the environment to hope to improve in some areas. How is the experience like, and how do you find like applying the science to this population?
So to be honest, like the experience definitely an eye-opening experience, and it's totally different from when I work with children autism. So even though the principle of ABA is the same, we use the same, like reinforcement, prompting, and all that, but how we do it or who are the target, for the children and older adults, they are similar yet very different. So for me, definitely the transition from children and older adults in the beginning, it can be quite challenging. You need to change your mindset, and you need to change the way you approach client. So for example, I think I'll talk about some of the example of works I've done, so that might be easier to to
Go
see
ahead.
how this transition. Yes.
Sure.
So for example, when you think about doing a preference assessment with kids with autism, so and in a very traditional way, you present the items and then you ask them which one they prefer, and then you look down. But if you work with older adults, or if you work with any adults with or without dementia, but it's actually quite awkward to do it. Like, yes, because like you present them the items, and then you're like, oh yeah, which one do you like? And they might look at you and be like, oh wow, I like all of this, or like I like none of this, or they're like, why are you talking to me like that, or why are you putting things, offering me items? Yes. Because I remember one of my colleagues, I think she tried to do something similar to preference assessment as well, but I think she's trying to do like edible items, so like food. So she presents the food to the client, but she tried to do it in a very natural way, like like it's during tea time, and then she will go to the client and be like, hey, I have this selection of like sandwich, like which one would you like? But the response she got is very, very different. So sometimes she would get a very direct response that, oh, I will pick this one, thank you. But sometimes she would get a response like, it's okay, you guys can pick first and I'll take the rest. So it's like, it's like that manner, like that mannerism thing. Yeah. Or there are times they are like, oh, okay, it's all right, I don't take food from strangers, so you can keep that. And it's like, oh,
there are a lot more variables to think about then.
Yes. And it's very, because if you think about and it's probably because I was trained in EIBI, so it's very direct, it's very structured. You have but you can't apply the same techniques to even to general public. Like, can you? Yes, so the way you say things, the way you approach them, it's very, very different.
Okay. Did you get into the adjustment very quickly, or it took some time?
No, it took me some time.
Okay.
Yes, because it definitely took me some time to actually get used to, you need to change the way you speak to people. You need to think about, okay, how do I do this in a very, very natural way? Yes. And also a lot of the techniques that we use, like a lot of prompting. So you will hear different story from different people when it comes to gerontology. So, I believe like of all the experts out there, they have been doing works in like different areas. But for my part, when I did my practicum, most of the interventions are focused on like, the environment, training the staff, and which I believe could be quite common when you work with older adults. Because if you look at the skills, skill building is a very common and important element when you work with children, autism. But when it comes to older adults, when they have a much more complex condition, and they might be even though in the setting at that time it's a dementia ward, but it's not a straightforward textbook dementia diagnosis. Because most of them comes with like various complex condition as well. That could be mental health, that could be like cognitive abilities, that could be like physical health that's been like less like their physical health is like deteriorate. Deteriorate. I found the right than usual. So when it comes like that, you need to take all these aspects when you design a program or when you do a skill building. You need to think of like, do they actually have the ability to do the things that you want them to do? So how can you adapt that, or how can you actually change their environment so that it fit their lifestyle, it fit their health condition, instead of like asking them to learn this. Yeah. So like another example, it's a program that done by my another colleague. So it's a feeding program. So what we found that's very common in care home or in any residential setting is that older adults often lose their independence very quickly.
Right.
So they become very dependent on the carers or on the nurses to take care of their daily life. So that's one of the things that we want to target is how can we retain their skills? So how can we help them to not lose their independent skill that quick? So that in that program, my colleague came up with this placemat. Yeah, so because you find that during lunchtime or during mealtime, it's actually the feeding skill is actually one of the skill that's one of the first skill that's lost in older adults, because and due to a lot of reason, could be because of their physical condition, or it could be that when they're in a care home, because the staff are always busy, they want to finish all the tasks. So instead of waiting for older adults to finish their food, the staff might actually prompt, or the staff might actually take the initiative to feed the older adults themselves. Yeah, so that they can finish the lunch within the hour, and then they can move on to the next task. So even though they do it unintentionally, but this actually contribute to the loss of independence, because if you don't use your muscle, if you don't feed yourself that often, you find within a very short period of time you just lost the skill, and then when you lost it, it's a bit difficult to catch up again, especially for older adults. So what happened is my colleague, she then came up with this placemat where you have the picture of where to put the plate, where to put the spoon, where to put the fork, and then you also have like a prompt for the stuff. So for each placemat is designed individually for each client. So for the prompt, it's based on that client's ability itself. So if this client has the skill to actually use the spoon, then on the placemat we will have the prompt that say that, okay, I can use the spoon myself, so only help me when I needed the help, and the kind of thing. Yeah, and we realized putting in like prompts like this, because this placement is a prompt for the staff. So it's a prompt for the staff, not only for the client. It actually helps to retain the skill of the clients. Like we help them to retain the independent skill, and it also helps the care staff in some way, because that means they don't have to put in so much time to sit with the clients, to feed them and all that. They can actually devote their time to do other things as well, and then just making sure that everything is going. So that's how it's different when it comes to like using ABA, because you are not only just focusing on the client itself, but also how to change the environment, how to train other people, like how to teach other people to do this.
Right. So would you say that so when you were working with kids with autism, so you mentioned that a lot of focus on skill building, right? Because understandably so, because skill building contributes to a lot of the behavioral problems, right? When they don't have the skill to advocate for themselves, that's when we see a lot of problem behaviors happening. But with this population that you're working, would it be accurate to say that the focus is more on maintaining independence? So whatever, because they are adults and they have skills, it's just that their skills deteriorate because of the medical conditions that they are facing. So a lot of focus is on maintaining independence.
Yes, and it doesn't mean that we don't looking at skill building as well. So we do, but it's also specific to situation, and it also depends on the needs of the client. So if if the client has behavioral issues, then of course we work with the behavioral issues. And if the client needs help with independent skill, then we work with independent skill. So behavioral issue. So let me think of an example about skill building for behavioral issue. So this is another case that I've worked with. So this client often engage in I would say attention-seeking behavior. So this is a care home. It's not a dementia ward, and it's so what happened is that when the client is in his own bedroom, they have this call bell next to their bed where it's almost like in a hospital where you can press the bell and then someone will come attend to you. And this is again, this function is very common in care homes, because often in care homes, that's how the carers would know that, okay, Mr. Smith, Mr. Smith in room 55 needs help, I'll go attend to him. So same case in this scenario, but what happened is that during night time, like around 8 to 10, the evening time where everyone is going to bed, ready to go to sleep, and the carer is like helping all the clients, to get dressed, to clean and ready to bed. So this particular client would often press the bell, but for various reasons. So like even though the client is settled, ready to bed, but she will call they will call the bell and then ask for help with can you adjust my bed sheet? Can you close the curtain? Can you open the curtain? And then can you give me a glass of water or things like that, which can be done in one setting, in one command, but it's always broken down into like frequent, several times. And for the carers at that time, of course, this is a big problem for them, because they need to attend to other clients, and then they can't just keep coming back to one particular client for non-emergency reasons. Let's put it that way. So for them, this is a huge problem, because it's causing distress in the staff as well. It's also causing distress in the client when they are not getting attended, because they feel like neglected, abandoned. So at the time, then we work on this. So we look into, okay, what's the function of this? Because the staff can't seem to get what's going on. So that's how we came in and we look at what's the function of that. Then we realized, then we did like a check-in procedure, because we realized that maybe the clients just wanted extra attention and all that. So we did a check-in procedure where we have staff that check in at certain amounts of time, and then make sure that they have like a full conversation, like a good proper conversation that satisfy the need, and then they go away. So at times this did reduce the bell calling frequency. So which again is like a win-win situation for both. The client gets the interaction that they need before they go to bed, and then the staff can also carry on with their work by just devoting a specific amount of time to client. And this can apply to like all the other similar clients with like similar needs as well. So
so that's also, it's like non-contingent reinforcement.
It is non-contingent reinforcement. Yes. And that's also comes some sort of like skill building, because you are trying to teach a client that you can't we can't press the bell all the time, because the staff need to do their work as well. So why don't we just press the bell at this specific time, when the clock goes to like that, the hands go to that time, then you can press the bell and that kind of thing.
Okay. Oh wow. So like I'm hearing from you and all these examples, I think the science is still true, and the mission is still true, which is whatever setting that which you have contributed to, the mission of ABA is still to improve lives and promote socially significant behaviors, right? It's like when you're talking about the independence with mealtime, that is really honoring their dignity and really promote a very socially significant skill to these old people who may or may not have dementia, right? Wow. So I think like in terms of applying the science, that I can see, similarities, and the goal and the mission is still the same. But like you said, maybe the approach needs to be a little bit different.
Yeah,
Because
definitely. Yeah,
right. That's a lot of,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And I also read, so like when I was you kindly send like two articles to me, right? So for the audience who are listening, Choo Ying did publish two articles with you have published two
Mm,
articles with your colleagues, right?
yes.
And when I was reading those articles, right? So because I'm very used to reading um, articles with a lot of jargons, with a lot of behavioral
Yes.
like we are using non-contingent reinforcement procedure
Yes.
to
Yeah.
so so when I was reading the articles that you published with your colleagues, um like the feeding one, the and the it's actually all antecedent intervention, right? Like
Yeah.
the one with there's one project that you did to promote engagement and
Yes.
communication, if I'm correct. So
Yes.
what you
With
guys
the
did
furnitures.
with the furnitures, yes. So what you
Yes.
guys did was just changing the environment and how the chairs go together in small groups, and then you can actually measure, they actually do interact more with their
Mm,
peers
yes.
rather than having all the furnitures to the sides of the room where
Yes.
they don't have opportunities to do
Yes.
that. So I was just like, that's just antecedent intervention, right? That's just changing the environment to promote the socially significant behavior that we want to see improve. But then what struck me was throughout the whole article, there was just no mention of, jargons like prompt or even the word antecedent intervention. I think it only appeared once or twice throughout the whole article. And then
Yes.
when I look at the keyword, it actually says stimulus control. So I
Yep.
think there were, in the published article, you need to put in some keywords for the publishing.
Yeah.
Um,
You need to tell people it's still ABA, so
yeah,
stimulus control.
yes. And I'm like, you know what? Well, so how do you draw like so from all these experience, right? And you have probably have also read a lot of articles when you were working in EIBI, and now you are writing articles and publishing articles, writing articles like this. What do you actually like? How do I phrase this? Like, how do you view the science? Like, how do you view ABA now that you've gotten like you've seen a lot of sides of it and how you can apply ABA to different population.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think definitely my experience from all these years has helped a lot in shaping my own values, my own
Mhm.
mindset, and my attitudes on how to use ABA. So I'm very keen on actually disseminating ABA to not just focus on children with special needs, but also to like general public or even other population as well.
Mhm.
So like what you mentioned earlier, that's no jargon in all these articles. And I think and I think it's actually very, very important for us behavior analysts to remember that when we are doing our work, we are actually entering the client's world. We are not
Right.
asking them to come into our world to do all this with us. It's actually us going into their world
Mhm.
and applying what we know to help them. So yes, no, not using jargon is very important, because when you try to talk to the care staff, you try to talk to doctor or clinical psychologists, when you use all these words like yeah, like
They,
antecedents or or even like non-contingent reinforcement,
yeah.
it makes no sense for them.
Right.
So we need to actually be good at using other people's language
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
order to carry out our own work, and to do what we want to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, and that's one of my things that I want to do with ABA, as a
Right.
behavior analyst for the rest of my life, to actually to reach out to more people and to help them to understand that ABA is actually not that complex. ABA is not that scary. ABA is not that technical. It's not something. It's not a different world that where you need to go in, because I often find that's a barrier between, that's what's stopping people wanting to reach out to ABA service provider as well, is that, I don't know what these ABA people is talking here, I don't understand their language. I don't I think they want to do something with my kids, or they want to do something with my family. I don't know what they're doing, but I'll let them do it. But that's actually not supposed to be the case. Like the family we work with, or whoever that we work with, they should be able to understand what we are doing without having to adapt all this jargon or this language. So yeah.
Right. I totally agree with you. I totally, after reading your article, I myself am like, oh, this is also ABA. Like, it is, all around us, and it is just, our expertise is really to, like you say, analyze the situation, help a multidisciplinary team to analyze the situation, analyze the function of behavior, and I guess track the behavior, have data collection, and then see if the intervention worked or does not work.
Definitely.
I think that's really wonderful. I also, so when I was reading the article as well, I think I can also draw some similarities as well. I saw there was one part of the article where I think it's your colleague, the one with the project with the placemat, the feeding one, and there were task analysis. For different kinds of food. So if like this client is able to use fork, then this is the task analysis for fork food, right? And soup food and spoon, right? So actually, it was really eye-opening for me to speak with you and read the articles that you sent, because then I really realized that ABA is really daily life.
Yes, definitely. And also another very important things that we as behavior analysts, which I myself think is very important, is it's really important to be able to work with multidisciplinary team. Yes, because I think that's the wonderful of the field, isn't it? Is that we are good at what we are doing, and how can we also work with other people who are also very good at what they are doing, and together make a difference in people's life. Because like what you mentioned just now with the placemat, the task analysis, we wouldn't be able to do that without the help of OT, if I can be honest. Because if you look at older adults with or without dementia, or with or without any cognitive impairments, we will all have all sort of health issues when we get to certain age, which is very common. All these adults, they might have arthritis, they might have pain in their joint, they might have pain in their knee, they might not be able to work. So when it comes to the spoon feeding, some of them might not be able to grab the spoon the way we grab the spoon, because of they might be feeling pain in their finger. So they might need to use a different kind of spoon, like adapted spoon, where you have the head of the spoon is like turning into a different direction, so they can just grab it. Like let me have an example. So let's say if this is the spoon, we just grab the spoon and eat like this. But for them, they might not be able to hold it in this position, so they might need to use a adapted spoon where they can just grab the spoon like this, but the spoon is facing toward them, so they can just scoop and
so
eat.
It's easier for them
So it's easier for them. So when it comes like this, this obviously we need input from the OT, because we wouldn't have any knowledge in all these different type of cutlery, all these type of spoon. So with the input of OT, actually we are able to design the intervention, individualized intervention based on their needs. So even with the task analysis, I don't think it's written on the task analysis, but like, you know, they will use a specific spoon. So maybe for the spoon, they will use the normal spoon, but maybe for fork, which need a different kind of force to hold this fork, you will need a different type of fork and to do that. Yeah. So again, that's a collaboration between us and OT, because then we know that, oh, all right, you know, we have all these fancy tools that we can use, you know, instead of like trying to teach them, you know, skill building, trying to teach them how to use the general spoon that we use, which is probably something that we would do when we work with kids with autism and with children. So for older adults, it's more like, okay, how can we make your life more convenient? You know, how can we understand that your pain, understand that your health condition, and then, you know, change the environment according to your needs. Yeah, which is also the same with the furniture project that you mentioned just now. So, you know, in typical care home settings, most of the time the chairs are arranged like this, where it's side by side, and it's around the wall, which when you think about it in terms of safety, that's the safest option for them, because it's easier for them to do all the manhandling, you know, easier for them to move the object around, to move the wheelchair around. But if you think about older adults, which might have issue with turning their neck around, so if you put the chair side by side, even if they know someone is sitting beside them, they might have difficulty actually turning their body towards that person to hold a conversation. And in that case, that's how you have very low engagement when you are in that kind of settings. Yeah, but if you put it in a round table, like in a dining table where everyone's facing each other, it actually makes it easier for them to actually see the person and talk to the person. And that's how you can increase the interaction, you know, without needing the help of like carers to jump in to start the conversation. So AB is actually just daily life, you know, all these things are actually very simple intervention, you know, it's just moving chairs around. But it's up to us to use our observational skill to actually look and see that, okay, you know, what needs to be changed, or are we missing something when it comes to this aspect and that aspect. So so daily life ABA.
So collaborating with multidisciplinary, I think it's really humbling as well. I think as behavior analysts, we should be quite humble and know where our expertise are and where we don't know, and, you know, work collaboratively with other people. I'm so glad I did. We're doing the first episode with you because this is going to set a tone for the rest of the episode, where we will be talking to a lot of people from different disciplines, but who knows about ABA as well. So Choo Ying, there's one more thing that I want to ask you. So you mentioned that in this gerontology setting, there were a lot of antecedent intervention used, right? So it's just like, for example, changing the spoon, right, to a very suitable one for the elderly, and arranging furniture around the house. Do you think now that you have transitioned into a school environment, right, or thinking back about your experience in the EIBI setting, working with younger kids, do you think that the same principle can be applied to the, you know, in schools or in one-on-one setting as well?
Definitely. I think it's all transferable. All this skill, all these techniques is definitely transferable. And I think even in the school that I'm working at the moment, I have seen similar placemat as well, you know, even for the kids. So of course it's not like prompting, but it's similar, but you have the placemat, you know, you have the picture of the place of the spoon, and then you also have, and the prompts instead for the teacher is also for the student itself. So it tells the student, you know, when I finish my food, I can, you know, put this here or put it there. So it's all on the placemat. So it's definitely transferable. It's just about how do you tweak that around,
Right.
how do you tweak that and how do you adapt it to suit everyone's need.
Right. There you go, ABA daily life.
Yeah, AB. Yeah, AB daily life. Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Wow. I'm so glad I had this conversation with you because sometimes, working with one population for a certain amount of time, we kind of go into a tunnel vision and think that, ABA is this rocket science thing with a lot of jargons, and I really appreciate you pointing out that, number one, we're collaboratively, number two, the jargons that we use really is things that are very easily can be explained using plain language, and
Yes.
I'm pretty sure when you do that, the buy-in from the caretakers, it was easier to get their buy-ins, right? They get what you guys are talking about.
Yeah,
Mm.
and also it definitely, this skill doesn't come easily. Like I'm still working on my skill as well on how to talk to like non-ABA people
Yeah.
about this intervention and all that. Which and I agree with you. It's important to get the buy-in
Mhm.
because you want them to understand what you are doing, and then you want them to have trust in you. So,
Right.
and that's how all this language come. You don't want to use all the jargon or the flowery language just to confuse them more. You
Right.
want to make sure. And in the end of the day, we won't be there for the client forever.
Right.
They need to, at the end of the day, it's their family, it's their friends, it's their carers that will
Mhm.
hopefully continue what we do for the clients, by
Mhm.
themselves. So yes, so it's very important not to use jargon because you want them to learn what you do. You don't want to confuse them. So yeah.
Right.
Mm.
All right. Thank you for the wonderful reminders, Choo Ying. So I do have one last question for you before we go. So do you see, I think this is a very big question for you to answer, but do you see how this feel like, how do you see a potential of introducing ABA to the gerontology population in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Do you
Yep.
see? Yeah.
Yep. So my answer is yes.
Mhm.
Yes, I definitely think there's a potential of this field in Malaysia, and I think there's a potential for this field in all countries, not
All
just limited
countries,
to just.
right.
Yeah, I think it's applicable in all countries, and especially for Malaysia. So I did a little study on the population of Malaysia before this. So, in 2020, so last year, 2020, it's expected that 7% of the overall population are older adults.
Mhm.
Yep. And they expected that by 2030,
Mhm.
15% of the overall population would be 60 years old and above. So that means by 2030 Malaysia will definitely be an aging nation.
Asian country, yeah.
Yes, aging country. And the life expectancy level in Malaysia is actually pretty similar to all the other upper middle income countries, which is 77 years old.
Mhm.
So, with the retirement age in Malaysia, I think it's 65, or
Yeah,
I can be
65.
very wrong, 65. So
Yeah.
that means after you retire from your work, you still have roughly about 12 years of average life, before you reach the expected expectancy of life. So what do you do with these senior citizens, when they retire, they still have 12 years to go. And like we mentioned earlier, ABA is not just for people with any cognitive impairments or intellectual disability or dementia. It's also for general public as well. So what can we do as a behavior analyst to help with older adults, to enjoy their old age, enjoying their old age, what can we do to help them to transit into life without work, now that they are retired? How can we help them to rejoin the social life again? Because given that if they've been working like 9 to 5 for the rest of their life until they're retired, it's probably a big transition for them to suddenly go into a life where you no longer have that work pattern, and now that you have to rejoin the society, rejoin the community life. They're probably not used to the idea of going out to shopping mall at 1 in the afternoon. Last time it's just like working in the office, and this transition, these changes can be quite a big shock to people. They might feel that they're not contributing to society anymore. They might feel like useless. They might have all these negative feeling, and with their kids all grown up, they might not have that companion at their home anymore. So how can we help with them to transit into to do this? How can we help to them to make friends, make friends with other people who are at your age, to enjoy, to take up some hobby, to take up some lessons, to the community, to enjoy movies. So what can we do with them? And also, if we want to put it back into the ABA context, ABA is a pretty new science. It's only been around for it's not even more than 100 years, I don't think so. Yeah, so it started in like the 60s and all that. So if you think about it, those kids that was receiving ABA treatment in the 60s, they will be in older adults now.
Right.
Yeah, they'll be in their the later stage of their life now.
50s, 60s years old.
Yeah. So there comes the times in their life. So now is the time in their life where they have to deal with, becoming older adults. You have all these physical, very common health condition. And then you're also dealing with a lot of losses. They might have to deal with losses of their families, of their carers, and thinking of them, they might have lived their whole life in their home, taken care by their parents. But now that, they might have lost their parents or their carers, they might transit into a residential setting. So do they have the behavior analysts to support them into transiting into all this? And also thinking about their own condition, they have like less eyesight, less hearing sight, the less of taste, and they might wake up one day and feeling pain in all this body. So for us, we might know that, okay, this is a sign of aging, is fine. But do they know that? Is there someone there to teach them that? Yeah. So often I think about, okay, like we help with them, but how about them in their later stage of life? Yeah, is there anyone? Yeah, or in Malaysia? So putting it back in the context of Malaysia, I definitely think there's a potential because, looking back at the population, I think we talked about this in the early, in the beginning of this podcast, is still very focused on children with, with special needs. Yeah. But how do we help with the older adults with intellectual disability in Malaysia as well? Do we provide all this support for them? Yeah. But definitely, I think to use ABA in gerontology, we definitely have to have a wide workforce that can work across all these settings, like what we mentioned earlier, work with OT, work with like physiotherapists, work with the carers. So we definitely need to have that awareness, need to have that mindset that, when you're working with senior citizens, older adults, you need to work with other people as well, so that we can transit all the work or pass all the work that we've been doing with them across the board, as well. So yeah.
And their expertise, and they probably know that those population a lot better than we do.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely need input from like psychologists that tells you, because I think one thing that differentiate working with older adults and working with children is that children are often like a blank slate, like a blank piece of paper. So you teach them the skill, they learn it, and then they carry it throughout their life. But older adults, they comes in with very rich personal history, learning history, in ABA terms, learning history. It comes in with all this experience. Sometimes it comes in with all these traumas, and all these things will affect how they learn things, or will affect how we work with them. So we definitely need to have that mindset that you are working with adults here that has
Correct.
all this history.
Yeah.
So, and all this history are not something that behavior analysts might be aware of.
Right.
So we definitely need help from a clinical psychologist. They can give us some input, like if they have depression, so how can we work along the depression?
Right.
If they have, let's say, physical health condition like UTI, which can be very annoying, it makes you agitated, you feel discomfort all the time. So how do we take in those aspects? And then with condition like this, they also need medication. So even though medication, we doesn't want to rely on medication, but at times we need them because it helps the body to function.
Right.
Yeah. So then we need the input from the doctor, from the nurse, to be like, okay, how do we do this? And then we also have to be aware that when they are on medication for their health condition, it will affect the treatment, it will affect our intervention. So then how do we adjust again our intervention to suit them? Yeah. So sorry, I feel like I've dragged like a long way away from the focus of topic. Yeah. But definitely there's a potential for gerontology in the society in Malaysia. I think we just need to pick our way out here to find the power
I agree with you. There could be so much potential for ABA to be applied in a lot of different kind of settings. Because I guess at the end of the day, ABA is really a natural science of behavior. It's not something that we invent. It's human behavior, right?
Yes, as long as you have behavior, there is ABA.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Choo Ying, for all of your input. I think we have gotten a lot of information and a lot of your valuable experience. You have explained it in a very, very nice way to illustrate what the science is all about. Right?
No jargons.
No jargons.
I hope what I share today is valuable. I'm not sure if I shared enough or if there's more that you want to learn about.
No, I think this is, you set the tone for this whole season, and with your different kinds of experience applying ABA in different kinds of setting, I think we've drawn differences and similarities, and like we mentioned earlier, the science is a science, right? And you did also shed some light on the gerontology, right? A lot of focus on your work was on gerontology, and it really opened my eyes. I really learned a lot, especially after talking to you, how prompt and preference assessment. I really like your explanation on that.
Yes.
I totally have never come across situations like that. And right. I think we're so glad to have you here on Seeds Podcast, and
Yay.
I think for future episodes we will be seeing you again. So
yes.
Yep. So we will see you again in future episodes, and stay tuned for the audience who are listening to us or watching us on YouTube. We will be having more guests to talk about how ABA can be applied in different kinds of setting in this season, and Choo Ying will be with us for the rest of the season. Thank you, Choo Ying.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Choo Ying sharing with us her experiences in the field of behavioral gerontology. Once again, we would like to thank Choo Ying for joining us at Seed Podcast.